Well, the nice thing about Algebra 1 is we always save the best for last. So you're going to get a kick out of this. Your parents might too if they're in the room. We are on lesson 12.3. We are doing the quadratic formula. If you know nothing, you don't know how to factor, you don't know how to complete the square, and all you know is the quadratic formula, and you remember the quadratic formula, which you will, just wait. This is really all you need to know. You can use only the quadratic formula and be good to go. I have students that text me from college and say, I'm still singing the quadratic formula. So yes, we will sing. Our essential question is, can you solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula? What we have to remember, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. The very first thing we have to remember is that all quadratics have to be equal to 0. Typically, if you can factor it, do that. Factor and solve, because that's the easiest. But if you can't, and there's an a term, this a term is what throws us off. When it's a 1, really easy to factor, or even complete the square. But when it's not a 1, when it's a 2, 3, or 4, you will want to use this. So here we go. You ready? X is equal to opposite b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so, yeah, I'm not embarrassed singing that. You may be, but we're going to sing it again so you guys can remember it. Are y'all ready? Here we go. X is equal to opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, now that I've totally embarrassed myself, possibly in front of your parents who are listening, but that is okay, we're going to look at 2 examples. The first one is in that order, ax squared plus bx plus c. So my a, my b, and my c are given. And I tell my students to just label them. A is 3, b is 1, c is -4. And we're going to solve by using the quadratic formula. So, since I have it, let's go. X is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus square root. Well, b squared is 1 squared. B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Now notice that this is kind of a mess. So the first thing we have to notice is order of operations inside the radical. So I'm kind of giving you some highlights of that. So let's figure this out. We have -1 plus or minus the square root of, well, this 1 squared will be 1. Notice I have minus a minus. Negative, negative, minus a negative, that will be plus. Well, 4 times 3 is 12 times 4, which is 48. All of that over 6. And a lot of you have probably already added 1 plus 48. So you saw that we have x is equal to opposite b plus or minus the square root of 49 all over 6. And you're like, wait, hey, I know the square root of 49. Yeah, you do. Your mean math teacher made you memorize it. So you have -1 plus or minus 7 over 6. Now, one of my students' biggest mistakes is actually finishing the problem. So if I take -1 plus 7, I get 6 over 6, which is equal to 1. If I take -1 minus 7, I get -8 over 6, which reduces to -4/3. So now that I see it worked out perfectly, we probably could have factored this, but a lot of you will like the quadratic formula a lot better because it's way easier to remember. Okay? So let's look at example 2. The first thing that we have to observe for example 2 is, hey, this is not equal to 0. So in order to make this equal to 0, I'm going to bring this guy over by subtracting. So let's name our A. Our A is 3. Our B is the one with the Y or the X. Our B is -6. And notice I do not have a C, so that will be 0. So here we go. Quadratic formula. Yes, you could have factored. Actually, factoring would have been way easier on this one, which we'll go back and do in just a minute. But this lesson's on the quadratic formula. So X is equal to opposite B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So notice that C was super great because all of this we don't even have to worry about. So let's see what we end up getting. X is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root. Well, -6 squared is 36. All over 6. There's a lot of 6's in this one. Let's keep going. X is equal to 6 plus or minus 6 all over 6. So let's go ahead and add. If I have 6 plus 6, that's 12. 12 divided by 6 is 2. I'm going to write that in green. If I have 6 minus 6, that's 0. 0 over 6 is 0. So my two answers, in this case they were y's, not x's, are 2 and 0. So let's see if I factored that, if I would get the same thing. What can I factor out of this 3y squared minus 6y? All right, so let's factor. I can take out a 3y. When I take that out, I have y minus 2 is equal to 0. So I'm going to show my work up here to give us room. Notice I can make each of those equal to 0. So 3y is equal to 0. So I take this one, and then I take this one. Y minus 2 is equal to 0. So when I divide each side by 3 in this case, I get y equals 0. When I add 2, I get y equals 2. Was that the exact same answer I got? Yep, I got 0 and 2 right here. So notice my two solutions for y in this case were 0 and 2. So let's just review very quickly on what we could do to solve quadratic equations. Remember that quadratics are in this ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. A long time ago, solve quadratics. A long time ago, you learned how to solve by factoring. That was in chapter 5. That can still come up and it could still go into play. If you could solve something with factoring, do it. In this chapter, you learn to solve by completing the square. Completing the square is helpful, but most of you, well, you'll know completing the square like the back of your hand come Algebra 2, but most of you will remember the quadratic formula, the one that I so lovely sang for you, and you will probably sing it the rest of your life, and you will either love me or hate me for that, but it's super fun. So do a little practice on the quadratic formula, and great job this year. Good luck on your tests. I'm glad we saved the last and the best lesson for last. So I hope you guys are doing awesome and have a great summer.